Protesters took to the streets of Madison for a third consecutive day, demanding action following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis last week. Hundreds peacefully walked down John Nolan Drive, closing down the major thoroughfare for hours.
Thanks for joining us. We have team coverage downtown tonight. Maddie O'Neill and Amanda Quintana both covering tonight's demonstration and how police are preparing for another potentially dangerous night.
Let's start with Madeline O'Neill, who has been following tonight's peaceful march. Maddie?
Well, this crowd of a few hundred is from that peaceful march from earlier. I'll step out of the way and show you. Earlier, they formed this human chain of protesters, putting black people in the middle. As you guys have said, this has been peaceful all day. There were several hundred people earlier at John Nolan Drive enjoying the day, but blocking off traffic for about 3 hours. Now, this scene looks pretty similar to what we saw yesterday. You know, it's about a half hour into curfew, but one main difference is we aren't seeing police officers out here. Yesterday, we saw at least a few officers watching. Right now, we see these few hundred people still chanting, getting their message out, peacefully protesting. As I've said, at about this time yesterday, we did start to see things get more chaotic. That's when police say a few amount of protesters started throwing those rocks, and that's what set everything off. Right now, they're saying don't shoot. You know, and we're into that curfew, but it doesn't look like they'll be going anytime soon. As I said, we're not seeing police officers, but our Amanda Quintana is here as well. She spoke with police earlier about what their game plan would be for tonight. We'll toss it over to her.
Yeah, well, Maddie, you can see we're right at the front of this line that they've put at the top of State Street. And, you know, if it stays peaceful, Police Chief Vic Wall told me last night he would have let them march up and down State Street all night. He would have let that continue if it stayed peaceful. But as you mentioned, the rocks were thrown, and he says that a police officer was assaulted, and that's what started all the police coming to this area. He says that usually during protests, police here in Madison, they're talking to people at these protests. They're trying to build a relationship, make conversation, but with this protest focused on police brutality, he says it's a really tough line. They're trying to balance how they have those relationships with people during these kinds of protests.
On the core issue here, we're all in alignment, and we're all have the same shared position. I think we're just trying to have a delicate balance of how we interact and trying to keep things as peaceful and respectful as we can.
And of course, the National Guard and other local agencies are on call. They're on standby in case something does turn violent here. He told me he's hopeful it doesn't. He's hopeful that it stays peaceful and they continue to chant and make their message heard, and police will make themselves not as visible if it stays peaceful. Charlotte and Eric.
Amanda Quintana and Madeline O'Neill reporting live tonight. Thank you both.